The room inside the Great Pyramid they refused to open it is 1993. A team of German robotics engineers is standing inside the Great Pyramid of Giza, not in the famous King's Chamber, not in the Grand Gallery, but deep inside a narrow shaft barely big enough to fit a human arm. They lower a small camera-equipped robot called Upuaut II into the darkness. It crawls 65 meters forward. Then it stops, blocking its path, a small limestone door with 2 copper handles, sealed shut. No one had ever seen it. No ancient record described it. Egyptologists had spent 2 centuries mapping this pyramid, and this door had been waiting in the dark the entire time. That was 30 years ago. The door has never been opened. And the question no authority has fully answered, the question that keeps researchers awake, is this: what is on the other side? The Great Pyramid of Khufu was built around 2560 BCE. For nearly 4,000 years, it stood as the tallest structure on Earth. It contains an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks, some weigh up to 80 tons. Scholars, architects, and engineers still cannot fully agree on how it was built. But what we're focused on today isn't the outside. Imagine you are standing at its base, looking up. Now, walk inside. The pyramid contains 3 known chambers: the subterranean chamber cut into the bedrock below, the so-called Queen's Chamber in the middle, and the King's Chamber high above. Running between them are a series of shafts, narrow tunnels, roughly 20 centimeters square, cutting diagonally upward through the pyramid's body. For most of modern history, scholars assumed these shafts were ventilation channels, fresh air for workers, a practical explanation for a practical problem. Then, in 1872, a British engineer named Waynman Dixon became curious. He tapped the walls of the Queen's Chamber and heard a hollow sound. He pushed a rod through a crack and discovered 2 sealed shafts that had no opening whatsoever, completely bricked over from the interior. If they were ventilation shafts, they weren't ventilating anything. Dixon retrieved 3 objects from inside the northern shaft: a bronze hook, a piece of cedar wood, and a small granite ball, before the shaft was sealed again. Those 3 artifacts vanished for over a century. 2 were rediscovered in 1993 in a cigar box in a museum in Aberdeen, Scotland. The granite ball has never been found. So in 1993, German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink, working under the Egyptian Antiquities Organization, deployed Upuaut II. And that is when the limestone door appeared, a door no ancient Egyptian text describes, a door no explorer had ever reached, a door that had been sealed in total darkness for 4,500 years. Here's where it gets strange. When Gantenbrink reported his findings, the Egyptian Antiquities Organization, now known as the Supreme Council of Antiquities, did not rush to open the door. They didn't announce an expedition. In fact, Gantenbrink was effectively barred from returning to continue his own work. The discovery that should have triggered immediate international investigation instead triggered silence. It would be 9 years before anyone sent another robot down that shaft. 9 years of that door sitting in the dark, unopened, while the world waited. In 2002, a National Geographic-backed team finally sent a new robot, this one equipped with a drill. It bored a small hole through the limestone door, inserted a tiny fiber optic camera, and discovered something that answered nothing. Behind the first door was a small chamber, and at the back of that chamber, a second door. What researchers found next changed everything about how these shafts are understood. The copper handles on the first door. New analysis found they were not handles at all. They appear to be anchors, pins that once held something in place, something that had been deliberately attached to the door and then removed. Before the shaft was sealed, someone placed an object on that door. Someone then took it away. Someone then sealed the shaft from the other side and walked away. Low strings. 3 theories have emerged among researchers to explain what lies beyond that second door. Theory 01. The soul shaft. The shafts in the Queen's chamber are not ventilation passages. They are serdeb shafts, passages designed to allow the soul of the deceased to travel between the physical world and the sky. The door is not a door to a room. It is a symbolic threshold. What lies behind it may be a ritual chamber containing offerings, inscriptions, or royal regalia placed there to guide Khufu's Ka, his life force, into the afterlife. Theory 02. The structural explanation. Some engineers argue these doors are weight-bearing components, that the pyramid's internal geometry required sealed chambers to distribute millions of tons of limestone without internal collapse. The doors are simply load-bearing slabs. What is behind them is nothing more than a stress relief void, an empty pocket of engineered space, purely functional, deliberately unremarkable. Theory 03. A separate burial. A minority of Egyptologists hold a more provocative view. The shafts in the Queen's chamber do not point to the stars the way the King's chamber shafts do. They point differently, almost as though designed for a different person, a different ritual, a different purpose. What if the Queen's chamber and its sealed shafts were prepared for someone whose burial was ultimately moved, abandoned, or hidden? What if behind that second door is a chamber never formally used and never formally acknowledged? In 2016, a new project called ScanPyramids deployed muon tomography, a technique that uses subatomic particles to image the interior of solid structures the way X-rays image bone. The results were stunning. Researchers announced the detection of a large void above the Grand Gallery, a hidden space that does not correspond to any known chamber or structural feature. Then in 2023, a follow-up scan confirmed a second anomaly, a corridor-like void near the pyramid's north face, approximately 9 meters long and roughly 2 meters wide, hidden, sealed, previously unknown. The pyramid is not fully mapped. After 4,500 years, it still holds rooms we have never entered. Here is the most haunting part of this story, and it is not the sealed door. It is not the hidden corridors. It is not even the second door behind the first. It is the question of why no one has opened it. We have the technology. We drilled through the first door with a robot in 2002. We have muon scanners that can map voids through solid rock without disturbing a single stone. We have endoscopic cameras that can thread through a crack the width of a pencil and return full-color imagery from the other side. What we apparently do not have is permission. At podium, journalists. The Supreme Council of Antiquities has maintained for decades that the shafts and their doors represent an active area of study, and that any intervention must await further scientific consensus. That is a reasonable institutional position. Archaeology moves slowly. Preservation matters. The world's most important monument deserves caution, not haste. But consider what we know. Behind the first door, a small chamber. At the back of that chamber, a second door, this one apparently intact, undisturbed, never breached. The first door had copper anchors from which something was removed before sealing. That second door has never been imaged from its far side. We do not know if there is a third door. We do not know how deep this goes. In 2011, Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass, then Secretary General of the Supreme Council, promised a live global broadcast of a robot entering the shaft. The project was announced with fanfare. International media prepared to cover it. The broadcast was quietly canceled. No explanation was given. What we're left with is this. The most studied monument in human history contains at least 2 chambers discovered in the last 30 years that were completely unknown to modern archaeology. One is a corridor near the north face. One is a large void above the Grand Gallery, larger than a modern bus. Both are sealed inside 4,500 years of stone, and somewhere, 65 meters inside a shaft barely wide enough for a camera, a second limestone door sits in absolute darkness. Waiting, the copper anchors on the first door once held something. A symbol, a seal, an object of ritual significance. Whatever it was, someone removed it before this door was closed, suggesting the sealing of this shaft was deliberate, ceremonial, and final. Someone decided what was behind that door should never be seen again. We don't know if they were right. Maybe it is empty. Maybe it is a structural void. Maybe it contains inscriptions that rewrite our understanding of Khufu's burial rites. Maybe it contains an undisturbed offering chamber, objects untouched since a priest pressed that limestone door closed and walked away in 2500 BCE. We don't know. And that is the truth this pyramid keeps teaching us. That 4,500 years of human inquiry and the most sophisticated imaging technology on the planet have still not answered the simplest possible question. What is in there? Imagine you are the last person to have stood on the other side of that second door. You press your hand flat against the stone. You turn, walk back through the shaft, and you seal the entrance behind you. You have just sealed something inside the most enduring structure humanity has ever built. You assume it will stay sealed forever. You may have been right. The question this pyramid leaves us with is not merely archaeological. It is philosophical. We build things to outlast ourselves. Monuments, institutions, traditions, secrets. We seal rooms and assume the ceiling will hold. And sometimes, 45 centuries later, a small robot crawls through the dark and finds the door exactly where we left it, intact, waiting, patient beyond imagination. What would you do if you were the one holding the drill? Would you open it? Would you be afraid of what you'd find, or more afraid of finding? If you want to open more vaults like this one, subscribe. We post every week, and next time we're going somewhere the maps don't reach.